Leo Johnson. I present a BBC Radio 4 show called Future Proofing, which is generally on at around about the same time as the famous TV show Bake Off, so no one listens to this program. I also head up the disruption and innovation team at PwC. And what I'd love to just, shoot out some ideas about and maybe even have a bit of a conversation is how optimistic should we be about where we're headed? We've come out of the first wave of this COVID-19 pandemic, and what does the future start to look like as we start to try to reboot the world? What are the genuine possibilities for doing something that's different to what's come before? That's what I'd love just to explore a little bit. I think we're at this extraordinary moment where the delta between the upside and the downside is greater than it's ever been. I think we are the generation that's going to see futures that is remarkably better or remarkably worse than what we've been experiencing ourselves so far. What are the levers that are going to need to be pulled? These are the crucial questions I just want to tease out some ideas on. With the Radio 4 program, we spend the whole time just trying to find these weak signals of disruption, which we then try to tease through the impacts on business and society to see what could it start to mean. And let me just throw out one story. Back in the days when we could travel, I was over in Singapore, and I got into their driverless car, and it was great. For about 250 meters, it worked beautifully. We just sailed along until the car suddenly just swerved quite meaningfully, decisively onto the wrong side of the road in front of a giant dumpster truck, which then just screeched to a halt. The emergency driver yanks the steering wheel, pulls us back onto safety, and then says, okay, that didn't go that well, but you got to understand, this is not your plain vanilla driverless car. It's a do-it-yourself one. And he said it's going to be just rolled out as fast as we can. $7,000 off the shelf, supermarket technology, bit of LiDAR on top of the roof. And the plan is we then went back to the ministry to do the following. Step 1, driverless cars. Step 2, to fully automate the economy. With Step 3, all citizens on universal basic incomes. And Step 4, with Northern Jakarta quietly going underwater from climate change just down the road, to close off the city gates to migration because it's going to be, quotes, too socially complex. So you got a straight line there from the technological through to the economic, into the social, into the political, changing the DNA of Singapore from open to closed city, from an engine of inclusive growth in the region to a much more cut off, walled city. And what I want to explore is what's the future post-COVID starting to look like? And is Singapore a weak signal of a future that's going to be accelerated? And I think there's an argument to suggest, that's exactly one of the signals that's getting stronger. If there's one thing we know that COVID-19 has done is it's reinforced this tendency for the big to get bigger and the small to get smaller. And it's clearly the pressure to automate, to get cost out. It's clearly the pressure to digitize, to make it biosecure and reduce human contact, the friction and the pandemic exposure. But what we're also seeing, of course, is the liquidity war chest that the big tech companies have got, their capacity to be making the investments into strategic sectors which enforce greater reach and extend their sectoral domination. This would be the Uber investments into Deliveroo and therefore into terrestrial profits. This would be the Amazon reaches through into other sectors, including into Zoox and driverless delivery. And what you can start to see is this trend towards concentration, towards the rise of a new form of platform capitalism, is a signal that could get stronger, and not just get stronger, but start to amplify at some speed. Because the nature of these businesses is they've got the opposite effect to those old third industrial revolution companies. Those third industrial revolution companies, the companies that thrived in the city of Henry Ford, are based on fossil fuel driven mass production, bowing down to the god of efficiency. They're based on these high volume, low margin business models where it's all about getting the numbers up to hit your break even. And in the context of a pandemic where suddenly you've got a supply and a demand crunch, where you've got less and less people with pounds in their pockets, that aggregate demand just plunges and their efficiency model becomes their Achilles heel. They start to enter into the death spiral where they just can't get the volumes up to cover their fixed costs, and you start to risk break-even break-even targets getting missed, and the death spiral territory. But these fourth industrial revolution technologies have got exactly the opposite characteristics. They don't need those volumes. They've got a model based on data as the extraordinary source of profits, and network effects, where Metcalfe's law, as the network increases, its value increases exponentially. And of course, the barriers to entry, that these deep data lakes allow access to insight from data that in turn entrench returns, market share, the capacity to acquire competitors. So you can start to see that this trend ain't going away anywhere soon, and that COVID has accelerated it. But then the question is, okay, what does that start to do to business and society? And this is where I think, and if you'll just stay with me for a bit, there's the potential for stuff to get a little rocky, because these businesses that are based on efficiency, high volume, low margin businesses, they're actually quite vulnerable. We know the retail sector. For the malls, it's the 30 to 35% occupancy ratio. For the planes, what's the profit on the holiday for the plane you, by the way, not taking right now to go off Luton to Barcelona? It's less than €1,000, the total profit of the flight. That takes 3 or 4 of us deciding not to go for safety or for financial reasons, for it to become uneconomic. In the banking system, the top 5% of a high street bank in the UK, the top 5% white collar customers, the total profits they contribute to the bank as a whole, it's over 100%, sometimes 150%. So if those white collar 5% start to lose their jobs, and the projection, by the way, from the Oxford Martin School is for 47% of US and UK jobs to be lost by 2035, white collar. The World Bank, where I used to work, 69% of blue and white collar jobs globally. The risk is that 5% propping up the banking system becomes uneconomic. You have sector after sector which starts to run into serious problems, serious structural problems. And then the question, of course, is what does this do politically and socially? And the answer is you start, I think, to see the risk of a double whammy. You start, of course, to see national assets hemorrhaging cash themselves. Transport systems, where in London you got, Transport for London, the tube journeys down 96%. Uneconomic services being run, needing to be subsidized. But I think you've really just got the double whammy across the economy of way less rates in through reduced economic activity. But on the other side, much more money out in terms of support, in terms of welfare, in terms of potentially universal basic incomes to prop up a jobless population. That's the sort of challenge that you start to see. And I don't want to get all dark here, but what you could see is that COVID-19 has, in a way, accelerated the emergence of a critique of capitalism that Marx made back in 1857, 1858. That the fatal flaw, the fatal contradiction inherent in capitalism is its tendency to substitute labor for capital. That, it's solving exclusively for the short-term goal of profit maximization, and therefore will get rid of jobs with machines if it's cheaper to do so. And the risk is that when you do that, there's a precariat that's created. There's just a group of people who no longer have the pounds in their pockets to keep up the demand for the goods and services that maintain the market. And it's that, for Marx, that's the fundamental threat to the very existence of a capitalism that retains its operating license with the citizens. Okay, that's getting a little dark, but I think that's not where the story potentially ends. I think we are at the end of an economic order. We're at the end of an economic, social, and political model built up around the governing principles of fossil fuel-driven mass production. And that economic model, Fordism, Taylorism, of course, it kicked ass. It lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. But it started to display its dysfunctions. It started, of course, to give off a climate burden in terms of the reduced absorptive capacity of the environment to absorb the greenhouse gases. It's, of course, given off the social burden of increased concentration of wealth, increased inequality. It's, of course, got the economic pathology of these brittle industries that are now getting disrupted. But what we're starting to see is these external pathologies are all coming home to roost and creating an external environment that's gonna make stuff a lot trickier. So, the projection is that there's going to be, by 2035, 4.9 billion people living in Asian and African megacities alone. That's the population of the whole world in the mid-80s in Asian and African megacities. That's all part of the the consequence of the 200,000 people a day fleeing the broken countryside for the city in patterns of distressed migration. And those 4.9 billion people are going to be living in places which are exposed to sudden or gradual climate shocks. In other words, in locations which are struggling to be habitable, and where the probability is that large numbers of them, the World Bank estimates 140 million by 2040, Cornell 1.6 billion by 2050, will be needing to flee. In other words, these same states which are right now struggling with balance sheets that need to be delivering on the needs of their citizens will be confronting an additional threat of the forced migration of hundreds of millions, potentially, of distressed groups. What you've got there is, I think, the possibility of a move from a state that's hollowed out, that's increasingly interdependent with tech platforms with whom it needs a synergistic relationship to outsource services it can no longer deliver. The possibility of that hollowed out state moving to a state that starts to have its operating license questioned, where the risk is that you move into alternate forms of governance, parallel governance, or indeed autonomous zones where the reach of the state appears to have failed. Okay, that I hope has given you a glimpse of a dark side. That I hope has given a glimpse of why a reboot kind of might be worth thinking about, because that's the current direction of travel. That's what not rebooting looks like. That's what, if we decide that actually what we want is the return to business as usual, if we want is a return to the same system that generated COVID, and COVID was not a black swan. COVID was a manifestation of exactly the pathogen creating model that we've got of unbridled economic growth, and of course the debt-fueled consumer culture that maximized the impact and consequences of the epidemic when it happened. If we do think that 2020 is another 2008, that the solution to 2020 is just to inject a little bit of liquidity, to get the market back up, to boost the animal spirits of the population and get people back out of the shops, and we've solved this problem, I think the risk is we're setting ourselves up for some troubles later down the road, that there's an argument that we need to reboot. And I would like now to pivot emotionally to where I think the logic of that reboot not just could go, but should go and actually will go. And to guide us, can I just throw out a quote from my favorite political philosopher of all time, which is Marilyn Monroe, who says, Marilyn says, sometimes good things fall apart so that better things can take their place. I think we are at this Marilyn moment where the third industrial revolution is convulsing into disorder, where there's the possibility of us moving to a fourth industrial revolution where we maintain the same approach, solving for short-term shareholder value, and create this highly concentrated model with radical disempowerment of the millions, with the creation of a category of the big useless, which all of us fall into. But I think there's also a completely different alternative possibility that's out there. And, what does this look like? Well, it's all about the relationship between people and technology. Technology, this is the old Kentaro Toyama quote, is not the answer, it's the amplifier of intent. And I think there is a possibility to take this same new stack of technologies that we've got and start to do something very different with it, which is not to concentrate it, but to distribute it, to put it into the hands of the billions. And, what does this start to look like? Well, you can see even in COVID-19, you can see this phenomenon happening. You're seeing the tech platforms consolidating their reach and their critical role and valuable role in managing the tracing and tracking, with, for example, Google, Apple collaborations. But you're equally seeing a completely alternate scenario in COVID-19, where this new arsenal of exponential tools that we've got, this new arsenal, which is often zero marginal cost, non-rival goods getting created, losslessly scalable, mixable, mashable, and relatively easy to pick up. I've been trying to learn to code at the moment, and I'm really rubbish at it. I'm learning how to chisel as a backup skill. But this same set of skills is just enabling a unlocking of an extraordinary level of not just participation, but creativity and innovation. And in the COVID arena, you've seen, of course, you've seen the Italian doctors in Brescia 3D printing the Venturi valves for the masks that over the weekend, they produced 100 of them in one hospital alone, saving 10 lives. You're seeing the Just One Giant Lab. You're seeing the Form Labs, crowd 3D printing of 100,000 swabs. You're seeing the crowd folding of proteins to accelerate the vaccine, the discovery process. You're seeing the magistral medicine, where the use of synthetic biology techniques is allowing local, hyper-personalized, nanoscale production of medicines at a fraction of the cost. You're seeing this unlocking of this extraordinary new category of cognitive surplus. And if I was to look at the logic for any optimism around these two scenarios, one of hyper-concentration and consolidation and radical disempowerment of the many, and one of hyper-distribution and devolution of a distributed, dematerialized, decarbonized, and democratized set of tools. Why do I think that second option is not just the one that's going to be kind of more fun and more of a, but actually works even within the logic of capitalism itself? And the short answer is it creates opportunities. It does what capitalism should say it does on the tin, which is it expands productivity. It expands the stock of capital that can be produced. It expands rather than shrinks beyond the urban and suburban affluent billion that the third industrial revolution has shrunk. It expands to the billions around the world. And you may say that's a lofty claim. But let's just take even the toughest example you could possibly take. Let's take the 1.4 billion people in the world who don't even have access to electricity. They're powerless because they don't have power. What can this existing stack of technology that we've got start to do to them? Well, just simple stuff like, everyone says, oh, give them solar lights, solar will work. Well, no, it's not going to work because it's too expensive. You don't have power, you don't have a job, you don't have income, you can't buy one. But there is a simple Internet of Things play you could do. Put a SIM card in it, means you can lease it for 40 or 50 cents a day. Suddenly, you've got access to a banking system. You can be making microloans. You can get microinsurance with geo-based payments if there's drought or flooding. You can get a microloan for the $36 Kickstart hand pump, which triples the number of crops you can provide. Gets you access to the underground water table that's there in 98% of unirrigated sub-Saharan land. In one study, incomes went up from $180 to $1,800 a head. Exam pass rates for the kids from 58 to 83%. And above all, what it's doing is it's creating a market. They suddenly are in business. They can suddenly have an income with which to get another microloan for a piece of refrigeration or even open source hardware, agricultural equipment. Move from being a distressed migrant, part of the political crisis that's about to potentially engulf us, into a local, viable, small-scale farmer that's actually working and has got access to their banking, to their water, to their crops, to their education. You've suddenly got a resilient, localized, productive community. And that's, I think, the model that's available to us. We're at this extraordinary point of inflection where we've got this arsenal of technology. We can decide to sit back and let that technology escape our control. We can become the consumers of it and reduce our technological, political, and economic sovereignty. Or actually, what we can do is pick it up, turn these tools into ones we understand, ones we create with, ones where we decide these are the problems we want to solve. This is the cognitive surplus we in the community have got. This is the native genius that we want to get hold of, unlock, and then line up this set of tools with this set of talents, with this set of problems, and start to knock it out of the park. And I think if we do that, it's not just going to be something better that's going to fall into place. It's going to be something way better. On that note, any of you who are still conscious, thank you. I'm delighted to take any questions. Thank you, Giacomo. That's so nice of you. Marvelous talk, well said, and the viewer is left with a lot of topics and options taken. Thank you. After that, do you believe such a change can happen, and how? Oh, great question. Okay, so short answer is yes. So one of my great inspirations in all of this is, I think we're all in a rut. We're all in a rut. We're all driving along with these obsolete ideologies guiding our behaviors about what we value, how do we deliver solutions to what problem. We're in these ruts, and the question is, how do you break out of the rut? One of my favorite inspirations of this is this Italian racing driver, 5'2", former ambulance driver, Tazio Nuvolari, who, when he was working as an ambulance driver in World War I, in the trenches of World War I, dodging the shells, he just pioneered this approach, which was to drift the curve, to steer the wheel orthogonally against the direction that you would think, get the rear wheel just to skid around, and suddenly you've just bisected the curve. You've shaved the radius, and you emerge facing the right way, dodging the shell, or in his case, winning the races. He became, Ferdinand Porsche called him the greatest racing driver of past, present, or future. But this was in the crisis lab that he did it. And we've been in a crisis lab. COVID-19 has briefly suspended the rules. And I think the chance now is for all of us to just find those embers of what works, the stuff, forget the norms that we're used to. Find what works, find what drifts the curve, find where the runaway solutions are, and deploy them and roll them out. And you're seeing across sector after sector, this is the stuff that's happening. You've got cities that are saying, you know what? We want clean air. We don't need to give over a third of our real estate to the car. And it might be Milan, it might be Paris, it might be Bristol, it might be Oakland, slow streets. They're saying this actually delivers on what we as human beings want. And by the way, it's a runaway solution because it does give you better air quality. It does give you better health outcomes. It does give you less fatalities against pedestrians. It does give you a livable street. It does give you increased retail activity as well, because it's the street where people want to go for. So I think if there's one thing I would say we need to do now is trust our instincts. And we got to think, what is the world we actually want to live in? Because that is the world that people will want to be participating in and helping to produce and helping to make happen and helping to spend their incomes in creating as well. And I think the more we lean into that stuff, the more it's going to work.
Hello, Leo.
Paco, nice to see you. How are you?
Nice to see you. Fine. Thank you to be here with us. I have a question for you.
Please.
If you can think in just one idea, just one, for all the humankind do it, to reboot the world, what idea can be? It's a complicated matter, I know. Imagine if you can say to everyone, please do this simple one thing.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
Ciao. Thank you.
So you know what John Lennon says? And it's also in the Bible, I think. He basically says you've got two choices. You can either live in fear or you can live in love. And I think when we are living in fear, when we're chasing the outcome, then we can't see, we can't listen, we can't feel, we can't notice, we can't respond. Frankly, it's all about us and our issues. And I think when we let go of that and acknowledge that actually it's not about us, that there's a bigger thing, it's about a we, not a me. And when we let go of all those fears around us and start just to accept and to stop beating ourselves up a bit as well, and allow us actually to be therefore noticing and feeling and hearing and responding to all those around us, the people, the place around us. Then I think what we got the capacity to do is actually to do the stuff that works, to do the stuff that's not, you know, just living off some agenda imposed top down that's a misfit. We'll do the stuff that resonates, and the stuff that resonates is the stuff that replicates, and it's the stuff that works. So for me, it's about the small. It's about being present, and it's about doing the small, and doing the small with attention, with love, in the hope that what resonates replicates, and that stuff that seems small becomes the massive small. So I guess if it's to sum it up in one word, it's strangely, paradoxically, in order to do a cumulatively huge thing, just relax the hell out a little bit and be there and listen in a loving way to those around you. Okay, there's a very hard question here. My question is, we need to review several important issues at this time, but the new order is moving towards greater isolationism among nations. Oh, you are so right. You are so right. And I really feel that there is a window. There's a window here where the risk is that the conditions in marginal communities, and I'm thinking, of course, of the climate stressed communities, for example, where the World Health Organization projects there's going to be 500 million people facing food security issues over the next year. The risk is that creates such a level of political unrest that we go down the route of putting up our borders, of putting up our barriers, of closing our minds, of deciding to turn our backs on the other. The century of the self has been a description of the 20th century. I think the huge risk is that we really make the 21st a continuation of the same thing. And I think the huge opportunity is instead to look at the potential to transform our relationship with the other and to find the synergy between it. And it gets back a little bit to the previous point. We've had a model of trade that actually was based on a global value chain approach that had at its origins the notion of let's just push price down as far as we can. And let's do a global value chain that's going to help us arbitrage labor costs, just find the cheapest place to build this product, and arbitrage environmental costs, dump the environmental externalities wherever they're cheaper, not in our backyard. And it's been about an unequal, sometimes exploitative relationship between local producer and the global anchor client that's driving the supply chain. And that for me is not an equal trade. And that for me is still an isolated form of trade that is entrenching inequalities between those nations. I think there's a real opportunity to reframe this and to start to look at a form of trade that's not based on protectionism, but it's also not based on exploitation. It's based on sharing ideas. It's based on co-creation of value. It's based on a company that understands how to use solar, maybe distributed, blockchain-enabled local solar, to get costs down, sharing that with their supply chain. Or maybe they got a closed loop process. Or maybe they got a process that's going to enable them to help farmers weave together interlocking data sets to know where the crops are, where the market is, what the right type of watering is for micro-irrigation, climate smart irrigation to make those crops work. I think if you can have a model of trade that's based on the equal sharing of those insights and co-creating value, then I think there's a chance for us to raise those living standards, to reduce the political risk, to stop the barriers from going down, and actually to create a rising tide where we can start to see the value of the different insights the different groups are bringing. This is the opportunity that's out there. Are we headed that way at the moment? It's my biggest fear that what we decide is just to move into a protectionist model where we literally just turn our backs on the many who don't have what we've got at the moment and reduce for them and us the quality of our lives. I think we're done. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the great questions too. It's been a huge pleasure to be part of Campus Party. Bye.